Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and I just hit a season-high ELO of 3346 in the Open Great League with a very unusual Pokemon, Gogoat. Now this team was not created by me, this team was recommended to me by a viewer, Mono Mac. It features Stunfisk as the lead, Feraligatr as the safe switch, and Gogoat as the closer. What makes Gogoat stand out compared to other grass types is its coverage move of Rock Slide allows it to fight back against the fire and flying types. Pradilly also shares this coverage, but Pradilly, due to the rock subtyping, is actually not the greatest into water types, whereas Gogoat has a very dominant matchup there. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and in game number 1, we pick up a pretty awkward lead, Stunfisk into Celio. Celio has incredibly strong neutral play into this entire team, so I would love to try and land a discharge here and get some chip damage out of this Pokemon to make it more manageable. Discharge does land, but look at Celio, what an absolute tank. Didn't even take 50% from the discharge, and they wait the turn to ensure that Surf lands on its intended target. I'm able to make discharge number 2. If my opponent shields, they're going to try and farm me down. I cannot afford to give them that energy head start, so I save switch into Feraligatr, and my opponent's going to respond with Wigglytuff. This is a matchup where normal Feraligatr is substantially better than the Shadow, because Hydro Cannon is still able to pick up the 2-hit KO. My opponent's forced to throw an alignment, otherwise I would outpace them and make Hydro number 2, so I will shield up the Swift, and then I'm just going to build up to the back-to-back Hydro Cannons. I want to ensure that I exit with the Hydro Cannon loaded, because my opponent has a ton of energy loaded on Celio, but Feraligatr will win Charge Attack priority. Since I do win Charge Attack priority, my opponent's just going to go for the free Powder Snow there. Hydro lands, that's going to be putting them very low. My opponent does wait the turn once again to ensure that the Body Slam is going to land onto the Feraligatr. There's a simultaneous switch, Gogoat into Shadow Sableye. Now I have to make a call. Is this Drain Punch? I say yes. I'm not going to be shielding. It's a foul play that does do big damage on a Gogoat, but Gogoat is surprisingly bulky, so even with my opponent landing the foul play, they're still in quite a bit of trouble. I land the Leaf Blade, I'm just committing to the fast moves now. I'm able to get them to 1 HP. I should be able to simul KO as I bring in the Feraligatr, and now it's a race. Thunder Shocks versus Powder Snows. We farm down the Celio and take the game 1 win. Picking up a great lead in game number 2, Stunfisk into Tinkaton. My opponent safe switches into a Primeape, and honestly, this team does not have a good answer to Primeape. I saw a lot of Primeape across today's sets, and I do think it is a pretty strong pick right now. Primeape basically has coverage for everything. I stay in, trading a Rage Fist for a Mud Bomb, and then send in Feraligatr. I would love nothing more than to be able to fully Shadow Claw down here. A boost in close combat would be catastrophic, so I put up the shield, but they go for the Rage Fist, and they make Rage Fist number 3, so I'm going to have to take a double boosted Rage Fist on Feraligatr. I did lose a lot of ground with Feraligatr, but the good news for me is that this energy is going to be very threatening into the Tinkaton. Hydro Cannon is going to land. I'm just going to look to overfarm as much as possible, and I'm actually able to get the CMP tie Hydro Cannon onto their Bulldoze. This Hydro Cannon will barely miss the knockout, but now I'm more than happy just to send in the Gogoat. I'll be able to have Gogoat up a turn, which hopefully can do well in the back. In the back, it's going to be an Annihilate. This is a low kick Annihilate, so they're going to have very fast pacing, but they're not going to have a lot of damage. Close combat would do a lot of damage to Gogoat. I'm going to have to make a call if I want to win the game. I decide to no shield, calling the Rage Fist. They do not go for the close combat, and that is a game-winning no shield for me. Well, it is, unless my opponent's able to get a catch. Now their only win con in this game is to try and catch the Leaf Blade on a Tinkaton. I predict that they're going to predict me to switch, so I'm just going to stay in and throw the move. I stay in with the Gogoat, fire off the Leaf Blade, they do not pivot out, and that should be the win. Leaf Blade lands, they're just simply too low. Gogoat farms down, I can send it to Stunfisk into the Tinkaton, and we're able to get the win. Hopping into game number 3, leading Stunfisk into Celio once again, but this time it is going to be the Shadow Celio. Shadow Celio will take a lot more damage from Discharge, but Surf would just about wipe me off the map here. I fire off Discharge, they're not going to be putting up the shield. I'm going to try and go for the Surf catch, but my opponent is just simply too patient. In comes a Charge Bug. This is a pretty bad matchup for Feraligatr, but I'm pretty happy to bait this out so that way Gogoat does not have to see it. Hydro Cannon will land on my opponent, perfect counting from them. They do not let me make Hydro Cannon number 2 and pressure away a shield. I need this Charge Bug gone, so I send it to Stunfisk, but unfortunately I do get 1 turn bring in, meaning I don't sneak through a Thunder Shock. A proper overfarm here would be throwing 5 and the move, but I only throw 3 Thunder Shocks in the Mud Bomb because I do not want this switch timer to come up. Mud Bomb will take the knockout, in comes a Quagsire, and I'm gonna sweep this trainer with Gogoat. They are ABA Water, we baited out the Charge Bug, and now Gogoat is here to absolutely shred through their remaining Pokemon. They fire off the Aqua Tail to get a little bit of chip damage, send back in the ELO, but the only hope my opponent has would be making it to 3 body slams, and they just simply do not have the energy. Leaf Blade will pressure away the final shield. They can fire off another body slam, but I can shield, Vine Whip down, and the Gogoat is just simply too healthy. I'm already pretty close to back-to-back Leaf Blades as well. Back in comes the Quagsire. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We move to the next game, leading Stunfisk into Stunfisk, a perfect mirror lead. Every time I see the Stunfisk lead with this team, I'm always a little bit uneasy, because usually Stunfisks in the back either have a flying type like Fearow or a bug bite user like Araquanid or Shadow Fortress, and none of those are good Pokemon for my Gogoat to see. So even though this lead is pretty fine, I'm very worried about what they could have in the back. My opponent fires off the Mud Bomb immediately. I did not go for the CMP tie there, so I won't know who wins charge attack priority until the 3rd Mud Bomb. I fire off the Mud Bomb. They're never going to be shielding early in this matchup because it all comes down to this. I farm up, go for the Mud Bomb. My opponent gets a catch onto Wigglytuff. I don't really want to send in for Alligator because the Mud Bomb is not going to put them into range where one Hydro will knock out. So instead, I bring in Gogoat. I'm really hoping Gogoat will be able to take the knockout here with the Leaf Blade. I need Leaf Blade plus 2 Vine Whips to KO. Leaf Blade lands, Wigglytuff survives, and that is absolutely heartbreaking. I really needed Gogoat to take the knockout there. I have a ton of energy exiting this matchup, but unfortunately my attack has been debuffed. My opponent gonna wait down the timer. In the back, they have a Shadow Counter Annihilate, and this is where things could get a little bit scary. I fire off the Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade still does some pretty nice damage for being debuffed. I make it to Leaf Blade number 2. Unfortunately, I'm just gonna get farmed down if I stay in, so it's time to pivot. In comes for Alligator. Their counters are doing big damage, but so are my super effective Shadow Claws. I know shield because I know the Stunfisk does have a move, and I'm going to try and get the farm down. It's going to be close. I do get the farm down. They're going to bring the Stunfisk. I'm just committing to the fast move down, and I can bring in Gogoat. My opponent is doubled up here. I'm going to shield because that way I can guarantee that the Vine Whip that snuck will actually register. But unfortunately, I think their Stunfisk is too healthy. I'm going to have to try and Thundershock down a Stunfisk, and it's triple resisted. This is going to be close. Can I get the farm down? Yes, I can. The 5th Thundershock takes the KO, and we escape with the win. We pick up a terrible lead in the next match. Stunfisk into Shadow Quagsire. In comes for Alligator. My opponent not pivoting out just yet. They stay into Fire Off, which should be a Mud Bomb. Shadow Mud Bomb does a ton of damage too for Alligator. I know shield, but I pay a very heavy price, and they send out Licky Licky. Even if I shielded the Mud Bomb, I would never be able to flip the Licky Licky matchup. That's just how dominant Licky Licky into for Alligator is. So instead, I'm forced to just kind of soft lose this matchup, try and get a farm on Stunfisk, and hope that my opponent is running one of these ABA water teams that I've seen quite a few times already. Perfect over farm from my opponent. They're not letting any energy go to waste. Body Slam takes the knockout, and I send in Stunfisk. Stunfisk will be hit with multiple charge attacks here, but I don't really value health on the Stunfisk, knowing my opponent has a Quagsire. Unfortunately, I can't quite get the farm down before they're able to make a last-second Body Slam. Body Slam will get me pretty low, but I do exit with some energy. I fire off the Mud Bomb just to get a little bit of chip damage onto the Quagsire, and it's time, send in Gogoat. Gogoat hits the field, they pivot out. That's not what I was hoping to see. It's Altaria in the back. But Gogoat does have access to Rock Slide. This is a moment where Rock Slide could potentially flip this game. I fire off the Rock Slide, they put up the shield. They're going to return fire with Sky Attacks. I do have a small energy advantage here, and I'm hopeful that that's going to be enough for me to win the game. I think I might still need a bait though, so I throw a very ambitious double resisted Leaf Blade bait, and the bait works. Altaria puts up the shield, they make a second Sky Attack, but now Gogoat should be guaranteed to land a Rock Slide. However, Rock Slide is not going to be enough to knock out Altaria. Altaria is very bulky. So, I think I'm probably going to need to try and go for a bait back out of the Quagsire. So I bank energy, set in the Stunfisk, there's the Quagsire, and if Quagsire knocks me out here, I can win the game. They fire off the Aqua Tail, they undercharge, and they stop tapping. They're going to knock me out. Can I get the farm down with Gogoat and win the game? They live on 1 HP, and they make the Aqua Tail. It all comes down to this. Do I survive? Aqua Tail lands, Gogoat gets KO'd. We were so close to overcoming the perfect hard counter, but unfortunately, we fall ever so short. We move to the next game, picking up a much better lead this time, leading Stunfisk into Empoleon. My opponent banks a Hydro, save switches into Altaria, and I don't honestly have a strong answer to an Altaria save switch. Now, if I had a better Feraligatr with a higher defense stat, then my Feraligatr would actually do pretty well here. But unfortunately, I have a pretty bad Feraligatr, which means that Dragon Breath from Altaria does 1 extra damage per Dragon Breath, meaning that in that matchup, I kind of get destroyed. So instead, I need to stay in the matchup with the Stunfisk, get some nice damage onto the Altaria, and then I can look to pivot into Feraligatr. Feraligator's even shaking his head here. Feraligatr knows his defense stat is not what it needs to be. Unfortunately, I just never found a better Feraligatr. I fire off Hydro Cannon, take the knockout, and my opponent reveals they have a Quagsire in the back. Last game wasn't ABA water, but this game is, and that is absolutely fantastic. I have so much energy stored on my Stunfisk, that's going to absolutely destroy that Empoleon, and I have a full health Gogoat chilling in the back as well. My opponent undercharges, trying to get farm on Empoleon, but I'm able to preserve the Feraligatr and switch back into the Stunfisk. I don't even need to go for the Mud Bomb at this point, just the cheaper pacing of Discharge is going to be exactly what I need. I make Discharge number 2, I lose Charge attack priority, but these Thunder Shocks are continuing to add up, putting them closer and closer to Leaf Blade range. Add to that the fact that all shields are now down, and even as my opponent fires off the Hydro right before I get the move and can probably go for a combo play with the Quagsire, this game is still just over. I fire off the Discharge, there's the combo play, in comes the Quagsire, sniping down the Stunfisk, but I had a backup plan for this, and its name is Gogoat. In comes Gogoat, we get the Vine Whip down, in comes Empoleon, Empoleon wins Charge attack priority over Gogoat, but Gogoat is pretty bulky, so they can fire off the Drill Peck, we survive it no problem, and make the Leaf Blade, and that is going to secure the win. Altaria is a bit of a problem Pokemon for this team, but with teamwork, we neutralize it, and then they were very weak to Gogoat. We move to the next match, and unfortunately, I feel like I have spoken it into existence as we once again see it Altaria. This time it is the Shadow Altaria, which does provide its own unique challenge. Shadow Altaria actually gets a Dragon Breath breakpoint into Stunfisk, so each Dragon Breath does 1 extra damage. Now that adds up a ton over the course of a match, considering Dragon Breath is a 1-turn fast move. Flamethrower lands, you can see how much more damage the Shadow Altaria does than the regular, and Shadow Altaria looks like it will be able to win the zeros here. I fire off Discharge, that's going to put them very low. I'm not going to survive this Flamethrower, but I will get a nice farm down with the Feraligatr. But my opponent goes for a Sky Attack, it misses the knockout, and Stunfisk hangs on, and Stunfisk will be able to win the lead. My opponent sends in Empoleon, they get the Metal Sound down, and Empoleon up energy is actually quite scary into this backline. I bring in Feraligatr, but Shadow Drill Peck is going to do a ton of damage. Ideally, I want to try and Shadow Claw into Hydro range, but unfortunately, it's not Hydro range just yet. So not only do I lose a lot of HP, but I'm forced to put up a shield. I'm going to look to try and overfarm quite a bit, take the knockout with Hydro, and then hope that Gogoat is going to be good in the back. Down goes Empoleon, in the back is a very big problem, and its name is Kanto Ninetales. Where was my Gogoat supposed to go into this team? They had a Dragon, they had a Steel type, they had a Fire type. My Gogoat is in absolute shambles. The quick pacing on Ninetales is a very huge issue. I farm up, fire off the Hydro Cannon. If there's any hope, it's in Shadow Clawing them into Rock Slide range. Hydro will be shielded. I try and make another Hydro, but they're never going to let me get there. It all comes down to this. I need Gogoat with some Vine Whips and a Rock Slide to KO a very healthy Ninetales. Ninetales, not the tankiest Pokemon around, but does have some adequate bulk. Here we go. Gogoat fires off the Rock Slide. Ninetales survives, and they're at the back-to-back Weather Balls. So close to the win, and yet so far. That Ninetales barely clinging on to life, but they have the Weather Ball. Gogoat gets KO'd, and we lose a heartbreaker of a game. We're looking for some redemption in the final match, and we don't get the greatest lead ever, leading Stunfisk into Corsola. Corsola is just so neutrally oppressive. Stunfisk does have a pretty massive pacing advantage, but unfortunately Mud Bomb just really does not inflict meaningful damage onto the Corsola. Usually Corsola lead teams have some kind of Shadow Claw resist in the back, very frequently a Licky Licky, so I don't really want to save switch Feraligatr like I normally do. So I actually have a bit of a crazy idea. I'm going to be doing something I haven't done all video. Instead of save switching Feraligatr after they launch the Nightshade, I'm going to be save switching into Gogoat. If they have a flyer, I'm just going to fire off some Rock Slides at it. In comes Gogoat, Corsola staying in, they bank energy in the back, there's the Licky Licky, and this is an incredibly important bait out for me. Had I brought in the Feraligatr, Feraligatr would have been completely shut down by Licky Licky. But now Licky Licky's on the field, Gogoat can get it pretty low, and hopefully Feraligatr will put in work into whatever they have in the back. The fact that my opponent did not have a resistance to grass brought out here makes me think that this energy will be valuable. So I decide to save the Leaf Blade and sacrifice the move on the Stunfisk. This is a bit of a controversial play, but I'm trusting that Leaf Blade is going to be super effective into whatever they have in the back. I send in Feraligatr looking for the Shadow Claw down, they're not going to let that happen, and they pivot into the Corsola. I shield up the Nightshade, I will get the full Shadow Claw farm down. I don't take the third Astonish, which is very nice, and in the back, my opponent has Shadow Celio. This game is going to come down to me having to snipe with the Leaf Blade. If I'm able to get the snipe correct, then I can win the game. But if my opponent's able to catch that Leaf Blade on a Licky Licky, that's how they're going to win. Hydro Cannon number 1 lands, Hydro Cannon number 2 will get the shield, but I'm still outside of Body Slam range, and that's very good news for me. I just undertapped the Hydro Cannon here. It looks like that was a charge type priority type because I didn't see a sneak. I feel like switching here and trying to snipe would be too obvious, so I'm going to throw 1 Shadow Claw and then snipe with the Leaf Blade. I throw the Claw, there's the Leaf Blade snipe, and I didn't see the catch, which means this Celio has been knocked out. All that's left is a very low health Licky Licky. Licky Licky gets farmed down, and that's a good game. All in all, I had quite a bit of fun with this team today. I will say the game state around the team was not the greatest. I did have one full freeze out game and another one where the game kept like randomly pausing and then catching me up, so I wouldn't really be able to do anything for a bit, and then suddenly my Stunfisk would have a ton of energy on it, and I didn't really know where my energy was at, where my opponent's energy was at. So even despite the game state being kind of rough today, overall the team ended up working out pretty decently. Gogoat is definitely anti-meta, but I can see why some players have been running it this season. I had consistently seen it across multiple Great League rotations, frequently paired with Pokemon like Talonflame, and I wasn't really sure why. And after running it, I have to say, the coverage and pacing on it did feel pretty nice. I also really grew to appreciate the fact that it is not a Grass Rock type like the other Pokemon with Grass Rock coverage, Credilli. Credilli's typing and coverage made it top dog as far as the grasses for many seasons, but I feel like having the rock subtyping in this season is more of a detriment than a plus. Being neutral to water instead of resisting it means that you're not actually all that effective in matchups like Feraligatr. Like Credilli very frequently gets destroyed by Feraligatr, whereas something like a Gogoat, where they have to farm all the way up to an Ice Beam to hit for super effective, and you can just outpace them and deal deadly damage with Leaf Blade, it really felt like Gogoat was a more convincing anti-water. Now, as far as Gogoat's overall place in the meta, I would put it firmly in the anti-meta camp. This is by no means a meta Pokemon, but what Gogoat can do is shut down a lot of teams that are very heavily reliant on waters, while still having some coverage for Grass's negative matchups. I think one of the big difficulties about making a truly meta Grass type is a lot of the Grass types are very RPS. They have their dominant matchups, they have their terrible matchups, and there's not really a lot in between. And I did appreciate that Gogoat, at least in some of its matchups, like against the Flyers and Fires, has super effective coverage. That Rock Slide is not often enough to like one-shot either of those Pokemon like we saw in the Kanto Ninetales game, so it's not going to be a very reliable check to those types, but I did appreciate at the very least not feeling completely lost in those matchups, whereas with other Grass types like a Gourgeist for example, if you end up on a Fire type, the game is basically just over. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do help support the channel by leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.